Hello, thanks for joining us on Survival Chicks today. I'm so excited to talk to Adrian and Joe of COAP. And COAP is Citizens Oversight Accountability Project. Somehow I found these wonderful people doing some wonderful work in the Cowichan Valley. And I think I was just scrolling through Facebook and I saw some cool posts and I had to call Adrian and be like, hey, let's talk a little bit more. So welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
Thanks
having
for
us.
having us.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourselves and your project and how this all came to be, how you guys came together in this?
Sure
I think
thing.
I'm kind of like the rambler, so maybe I'll let Adriana and then I'll just inject as needed.
Oh no, I mean it's really a simple story when it comes to Joe and myself. We decided to run for council, and I had known Joe's partner before, and then was introduced to him through possibly being able to help us with just some of the social media or the media because he's really good at tech. And then somehow I convinced him to run with us too. And so we decided to run for council. And through doing so, we really got engaged with our local government policies. We started to find out, oh, this is how they run through things. And we deeply read all of our local plans, our transportation plans. And then we hit the streets and we started talking to people. And we found that pretty much all the people that we talked to didn't know anything about these plans, nor did they agree with them when we broke them down and said, hey, could you be without a vehicle, for instance? And but all these policies just go on behind closed doors and everyone's just busy working their 9 to 5. So Joe and I made this kind of deal that even if we didn't get in, we would continue to then hold the government accountable. So that's the kind of the quick version of how we
Yes,
get together.
great work.
Joe, you got any other?
Oh man, yeah. That's pretty much the short version. Like I would say I had a lot of fun following politics, especially in the last few years. I think with social media and more policies being about social issues and less about, you know, whatever it is, permits and financials. And I'd say politics really got, I'd actually say exciting in the last probably 7, 8 years. And it, for myself, maybe, I'm in a weird age. I'm 38 years old. So, I don't really
So
watch a lot of
weird.
TV. I'm not a big TV guy. I don't do a lot of like social media in terms of the entertainment value. I like to be efficient with my time. So most of my free time is learning a new hobby, learning a new skill, just researching things just for myself. I don't know. I guess I'm a little bit anxious on things. I like to go fast. So if I can learn things, I feel like I'm making a good use of my time. So when it came to politics, I just found that whole industry, it moves so fast, there's so many changes, and it's never the same. It's actually a really exciting place to be. I know people think politics is really boring, but when you really get into it, it's a very exciting space, and there's always something new. There's always some kind of controversy, and it's a lot of fun if you follow the media because you really get to see it for yourself when you watch it happen. And then you watch how media tells the story, and you start to see gaps in, I'd say, the kind of headline topics. Somebody could talk for an hour, but what made it to the news is a 30-second clip. And when you actually took the time to watch that whole hour, it makes sense. The context makes sense. Even the
Mm.
policy totally makes sense. But when you read the little snippet, you're like, oh, that's crazy. I didn't think about that. But then you watch it again and you're like, no, actually, that's not what happened. And I think that you realize that news and politics and media actually is this kind of entertainment. And I just found it fascinating that our country and our policies move on something that could really be like evening TV. And I just wasn't expecting that. I knew when you watch like American TV, theirs is so sensationalized. It is like evening TV. And I just didn't think that was the case in Canada. And
So
it
when
is.
did so when did you guys start this? Like when did you find this out?
Um, Probably. in the last about 3 or 4 years, really. I
Okay.
think not to specifically blame the more like climate agenda, but that's when things became less like trackable. That was when it wasn't like a specific event. It was a thought about, if we keep doing this in 10, 20, 30, 40 years, this thing might happen. And then you see the two sciences start fighting, but there wasn't like a specific, river or a war or attacks that kind of happened. It was we think this will be the future, so we should start doing these things now. And without that piece of something hard to hold on to, it kind of left it up for debate. So I felt like for the first time in a pretty long time, all the politics that came around it, which started to be a lot of theory, a lot of belief, a lot of thought. And I just thought that was such an interesting time to jump into politics, where it's not black and white. There's so much gray. I don't know. I felt like that was a good time to jump into it, because there was a lot of movement still. It wasn't a hard anything. There was room to jump in and join. And that's kind of what I did.
Interesting. It's interesting that you found the, late night entertainment television, which now that's all that I see. That's all I can see, right? So I don't really watch it, but when I do watch it, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. But I didn't know that, I don't know, 3 years ago. I didn't know the depth to that 3 years ago, we'll say. I thought, I knew that there was an exaggeration, but I didn't think that there was like, what there is today. I think there's a lot of complete misconstrued topics or reversal of what's actually going on and what we're telling the people.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And I can say, like, when we talk about left and right, I've changed my thoughts on some things for sure, but I've pretty much stayed the course for the vast majority of my life. I'm older than Joe. And some things shifted in me. I always knew that there was some corruption, but I used to follow more like the wars, the corruption around wars. And I was really, really deeply into that and trying to expose, the fraud around these wars in Syria and all over the world. And so I never thought that government was my friend. However, I did used to brag that I lived in Canada a little bit. My family's all American, and I'd be like, "Oh, I live up here," and kind of lucky. And now I'm kind of thinking the opposite. That I look to my family in the South, because they actually do have a lot more freedoms, like freedom of speech and things that we don't actually have here. But some things have swayed in me, and one of those would be the climate narrative, and that's because of my age. I mean, I did stop using hairspray because I thought I was creating a hole in the ozone, right? Back when we had our big hair back in the day. And then I started advocating for children's rights before COVID, when they were trying to install Order 376. And that is actually an order that states that all children must be on a digital registry for their vaccine status. And when we were diving into this, we said, look, this isn't going to just stop at children. This isn't going to stop at children. Like, this is
And
just...
how long ago was this?
That was 2018 and 19. And it
Okay.
was somewhat during that, when they were blowing up the measles thing back in the day for children. And so we had huge rallies, and we had, I did a full petition, and that petition we had to do almost all over phone, because then it was COVID. And we printed them all, cost about $500 to print, full printed, really thick petitions, and we dropped them off at every single MLA's at their offices.
Wow.
That order is still in the books, but it hasn't been really enforced, because then COVID came in and they could enforce so much more. But it started me actually changing my mind around my local MLA and MP, and not thinking the same thing I did before. And so all this evolution started to happen and all this information that I wasn't delving into when I was looking into wars. I was not looking into the WEF. And so then all of that information started coming my way, and it just caused me to be realize that even though I thought I was quite awake, I was actually still very, very disillusioned with the realities in this world.
Yes, I can relate. Very much so. I feel like I thought perhaps that I knew some things weren't as they seemed until, 3 years ago. And I was like, a lot of things aren't as they seem.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, I like your tree.
Yeah. Yeah. That's unfortunately a purchased tree. I didn't make that one, but it's
Well,
yeah,
somebody
it
made
is.
it.
Somebody made it, and it was also locally made, so I felt good about it,
Oh.
I guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not quite at the point yet of my woodworking that I can do that. I have made some like cutting board type of things, and actually that's mostly my partner's projects. I just do the heavy lifting of things, all the intricate things, the carving and whatever. She does those because I have no patience for it. I can't do it.
Nice. Shoot, I was gonna say something. So in the Cowichan Valley, where you guys are, you're both living there, yes? So
Yeah.
do you want, not everybody's from BC or Canada. Do you want to explain a little bit of where that is?
Sure. It's on Vancouver Island, and it's about 45 minutes between Nanaimo or Victoria. We're kind of in the middle there. And so it's a really extremely beautiful, beautiful valley, very popular for people to move to because they can commute. We have
Ah,
vast amounts of farmland and wineries, and then little towns scattered throughout the area. It's
and are you on the ocean?
no,
Okay.
no, we're not far from the ocean, but I mean, we're what 15, not even 15 minutes away from the ocean, but
Okay.
we're kind of we're like in a valley, basically.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, it's absolutely beautiful, beautiful place to be, and that's why we're trying to keep it that way.
Yeah, and that's Vancouver Island, British Columbia. For everybody else.
Yes, right.
Okay. So we've come together, you decided to run for council, and I'm guessing you didn't make it, and you continued on with this journey to keep media and government accountable.
Yeah, yeah.
So
We
how are you doing
decided.
that right now?
Well, initially we just decided that we need to make these actions that we had already thought about, and in order to do that, we have to make it official. So we actually incorporated, and then from that incorporation, we set out goals and plans and things, hoping, okay, we want to meet this, we want to make this website, we want to, so we just basically laid out what we want to do, not saying that we knew what was going to be effective and what wasn't. We just thought, here's some of our ideas. If they're effective, great. If they're not, we change and we just keep evolving. You can add to that
Adapt.
too. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Joe.
you're muted. Nope, still muted.
Hmm.
Did something happen?
That's
Something
okay.
happened.
He's a techie. He'll figure it out
Yeah.
quickly.
We'll give him a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So we just and we had so many people. Our valley is so amazing. The community is absolutely stunning. We just had so many people wrap us in their love and support when we were running for council. They would come to every meeting. They would hold these little barbecues for us to get together. Just amazing community we have here. So we knew that they would have our backs when it came to this as well. And sure enough, they
Amazing.
were so excited. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
we're
noticed
very.
you've got a fairly big follower base already on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we actually just our Substack just seems to be, I mean, we had an initial explosion, a little bit of a level off, and then a slow climb. And then in the last week, it seems to be like, I don't know, like the other day I said, why are we getting like 7 to 10 a day now? And there's multiple reasons. I think there we can hear you, little
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, there we go. Ooh, techie
Good.
fixes on the fly. Good stuff.
Go ahead, Joe. I was filling time.
Yeah, I totally forgot what we were even talking about, so it's fine. I went off in another world there for a minute.
Oh, it's just about how we like decided to incorporate and then how we.
Oh, yes. I remember. I'm back again. It's all right here. Yeah. So my career is very, very corporate. So when we thought about making a business, my very first thought was like, okay, we're gonna have to have some kind of vision. Like I want to know what our 3, 6, 12-month plan is. And I was trying to run through everything. And I sort of realized that structurally, we can put together things like our website, social media, register things, incorporate the business and that sort of stuff. But in terms of how do we essentially affect the market? Like where will we find supporters? Where will we find funding? Like how will we reach people? All of those things, I think that were relatively for us were unknown because most of the people I'd say in the I don't want to say we're kind of activists, but if you're not okay with the current narrative or the way things are going, people typically, I'd say, have a way to rebel. And that's not my background. So when I was thinking about how do you do it? How do you voice concerns? How do you oppose the current narrative? All I could think was, well, we already know that there is a group out there creating the narrative. They are pushing their agenda. We essentially would do sort of what they're doing, with just another viewpoint instead. So I wouldn't say that we kind of mirrored the current narrative, but we used it as a bit of a guide. And of course, in order to do that, we had to look into how do they do it? Like how do you talk to council? How do you email and ask about, can we do consent agenda items? How do you do like freedom of information requests? How do you do a delegation? Like all that kind of stuff. We didn't have essentially a political like group behind us. We were those two people figuring it out. So I think really for the first, I would say 3 to 6 months was just all the kind of shotgun technique of let's try this. How did it land? Okay, let's take feedback. Let's try this. How did it land? And we'll take feedback. And now that we're about a year in, I really think that we've narrowed down how to be effective. And at this point in a stage, we're just trying to realize where our best use of time may go. So now that we've essentially had almost a year of learning about how we approach council, how do we approach agendas, we're really at a point now where I think we're just about to move a lot faster because we're just not trial and erroring everything. We actually have a bit of a 3, 6, 12-month plan. We have a little bit of funding. I mean, we are pretty on the line, but we're kind of gaining steam. Our supporter base is great, and we do have a big community in behind of us. So a lot of the skills and stuff that Adriana and I have had to wear 8, 9, 10 different hats. We're just starting to move a hat or two off of our current plate. So it has been a lot of trial and error, but we also did so without, I'd say, the common way to do things. We don't have huge business backing. We don't have grants. Like we don't have our fingers into any kind of obligation. We run off of just donations, the quote unquote, the normal grassroots stuff that I think also we had to learn. How do you fundraise? How do you we really did everything ground up so that we knew for sure whatever we were doing was just the two of us. I think that was the biggest thing that we started with was we didn't want to accidentally get caught into something because we were pretty new and naive to how things went. So we really went slow and careful just to be sure we didn't get stuck into something that later on somebody can throw it at us and say, oh, we know you guys, you're funded by big whatever, or you're in bed with whatever. Like that does not exist for us. And I think that made it a lot more difficult to really get rolling.
You guys are freaking awesome. You guys are cool. Great work. Man, it takes so much effort and drive to do what you're doing. I really appreciate that we've got people like you around.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of become my full-time job, and that's why we're but it's not a full-time job that pays for my bills quite yet.
right, right. So having
Um,
said that, why don't we talk about that for a minute? You have a newspaper and you are looking for funding. If someone were to fund you, how would they go about doing that?
well, we have multiple ways for the newspaper. Um, what we decided, like, I come from that background, 14 years of selling ads for a very, very popular local magazine here. And so it was kind of a little bit my passion project because Joe's more the digital passion projects. And so, it was like, hey, this could bring an income because then you're actually exchanging something. Because what we were basically living on, and by living on, it's not for us, I mean, just so that we could put up a website or whatever, was just local angel donors that are in our community. And we wanted to be able to reach past these generous few people. And so we thought, okay, well, the newspaper, there's an exchange of goods. You can buy an ad, and then you can get that write off for your business. And then we also just last month decided that we would start a sponsorship program instead. Our newspaper is not very it's not very controversial. We're not touching on real controversial topics besides the climate topic. And the only reason that we're touching on that is because all of the policies have to go through that lens. So we have to actually talk on that topic. So then, but there may be someone out there, I don't know, that just doesn't want to have an ad, but they really love what we're doing. So we also decided that people can join on as a sponsor. So we have a few monthly sponsors that behind the scenes, they just monthly sponsor to make sure that we can pay to print this newspaper. When we have
Okay,
other people,
so sorry. So
or
if I want to go and give you a monthly donation, where do I go?
well, the Substack that we have some we have it from $8 to whatever the heck you want. And we put out a little note the other day that said if all of our members just paid the $8 a month, this newspaper would pay for itself. No problem. Easy, easy, easy. So there's multiple ways, but I would say the Substack is the donation. It says on our website, coap.ca, COAP.ca, it says donate now.
Nice. Okay, perfect. And what is your newspaper called?
The Westward Independent.
The
And it's
Westward Independent.
www.ind.ca.
Cool. Okay, so we can go through and look at it online. Do you have physical copies also that you distribute? Yeah.
Yeah, we print right now about 3,000, depends on the income, but it's
Wow.
no less than 3,000 copies. And then currently, because of our amazing volunteers,
Yay.
oh,
Look
you
at
got the
that.
latest
What a
one?
beauty.
Um, put it up like and don't move it. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, that's awesome. Beautiful. And where can we pick those up? Like, where do they get distributed from?
Well, we have our wonderful volunteers that do all the distribution. And since I worked for this other print magazine, I just kind of laid out where these are best to go. So local coffee shops, grocery stores. They're also going in some urban mailboxes because we talk a lot about the farmers here. So we have little towns, but then we also have vast areas of urban. So we have volunteers that go to the urban mailboxes, but mostly I would say in our area, library, coffee shops, all the usual places that you would pick up these news,
Amazing.
Tim Hortons, all those places. Yeah.
It looks great.
Yeah, we actually did have a map on our website that had the distribution areas, but we got a tip from the community that some of our call them opposition, we're actually going to all the areas that we distributed to destroy the paper. So we ended up removing the map from the website, but when we did have it up, We had almost
Unbelievable.
130 locations that carried the
Wow.
paper.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing for me in this whole endeavor was realizing the difference between, like, if you have a viewpoint like left or right, I think, and Adriana hates it when I always say this, is that I'm actually really grateful and happy that we have a hard left and a hard right and everything in there, just because I think that we really need it. Like, in the industry that I've been in, we have a lot of different departments. And when we say our department needs, and it's X, Y, Z, et cetera, we could make the best argument possible why it's like a business need. We could come up with a business proposal. We could do all of those things. But if you don't actually consult with all the other stakeholders, you could make a change or do something that has a detrimental effect to a team you've never even heard of. So before that you implement anything, you need to do those roundtables and consultations. Like, those are really important, because there's no way that I would be able to advocate for dozens of different groups. Like, my area of expertise and my whole world is, in its own bubble of some form. And if I want to pitch or propose something, I personally think we need the other side's feedback, because if I want to invest time and money and effort into anything, and it turns out that there's a fundamental flaw that ruins it, why would I want to proceed with that, waste all my time and resources? If I can get that up front, we can prepare for it, address it, adapt for it, and then the project that we rolled out could be beneficial for everybody. Not every group is going to win, like, in every project, but if you don't consider them, then that kind of echo chamber, it honestly is just awful. It's absolutely awful to put anything through if you don't have all the knowledge and information in front of you. And that, I think, is the biggest thing about why we started Wind and COAP, is that there is a tremendous amount of community that is not doing well under our current policies, agenda, procedures, et cetera. And even if your own belief is hard left, hard right, et cetera, everything I look at is, that's fine and good, but what about the policies? Like, just because you're hard left or you're hard right or middle or anything like that, regardless of your thoughts and feelings, what happens because of that? Like, what did we do? Like, what taxes did we just change? What bylaw did we bring in? What restriction did we have? Whatever it is, it's like, how did this affect everyone? And I think, as we were talking earlier, is that is the biggest part that we learned on the campaign trail, was when you look at the various groups that held the town halls, the public meetings, the everything, they had almost this feeling of unity, where you actually felt like, hey, this whole community is really driving forward. This is amazing. It's going to be so great. And then when we did our campaign trail and we just talked to random folks in their home, on the street, grocery stores, whatever, we heard a completely other narrative that said, we're not doing okay. We are not fine. This is crippling my business, crippling my home. I don't have money. Like, all the various concerns that have popped up. And for myself, I said, wow, like, what a contrast from what we hear and what, if we visit council and you listen to the meetings, or you go to the different associations and neighborhood groups locally, they're always talking about how wonderful things are. It really gives you this false feeling of, man, we live in the best place alive. Like, what a utopia of just an amazing community. And it really fills you with a ton of pride. And then you see the other side. And then you sort of realize that there is a contrast, and that voice did not make it to council. It did not make it to the vote. It did not make it to the town halls. It wasn't there. So when we did our research and our kind of probing, what we really found was that there is a large part of our community. I think this is shared not just with us. Like, we have talked to other groups across Canada, and people right now are feeling the squeeze, but they're too involved with just surviving it. They're working 2 or 3 jobs. They're dealing with, stresses and their family and just living situation. And these are the folks that, like, they're not going to go to council. They're not going to show
100%.
up and sit there for 3 hours and listen to bylaws about building permits and variances. And then you really have to understand too that sometimes the policies, like the one that we went to just last night where North Cowichan was looking over step codes, a step code to a regular person, you're like, well, I'm not a builder. I don't do construction. Like, what do I care about building codes? I'll let the builders figure that out. I'm going to go to my third job and try to pay my mortgage this month, right? But hidden within that step code are these like changes, for example, to start restricting how you can use natural gas and where your hookups are. Maybe on a day-to-day level, you wouldn't care. But if somewhere in your financial plan is, man, I'm really hemorrhaging a lot of my BC Hydro, next year I'm going to install my gas stove and that'll really give me some kind of savings. Well, maybe now you can't. And you're like, what do you mean I can't? Well, last year there was a council, like, didn't you go? And it's like, no, I didn't even know that was even a thing. And there's a lot of things that happen like that basically every single month. And when we go to council and we interact with our local government, some of these meetings have as little as 4 or 5 people that actually show up.
Wow.
So in our community of almost 35,000 people, some of these big ticket items just roll right through council with 4 or 5 people actually speaking to it, and you just don't realize that's even a thing until you actually start going for yourself.
And that's one of the points behind our Substack, is that though we'll send something that might be relevant outside the community, the things that we send would be relevant to your community because everything is happening in lockstep. I talk to people all across British Columbia and they're literally in the same meeting fighting the same thing that we are, like the natural gas thing, in Kamloops within the same week. So these proposals are being brought forward by local NGOs or by larger NGOs like the Climate Caucus. They will blanket send out letters, and then the council will bring that letter forward for consideration. And so, as Joe said, most people don't know. So what we do is we constantly read the agenda. It comes out on a Friday. We pick through it, usually find something, and then we'll send it out to people. And that's what people are kind of grateful for, is that they don't have to pick through the agenda. We just say, hey, here's something. You might want to come and show up. So now we have so many more people that are showing up.
Yes.
Because Joe said they're busy. And I don't have an issue with the left and right per se, but what I do have an issue with is that when we were looking at these policies, they were talking to stakeholders, the stakeholder partnership, which all come from one viewpoint, all of them. And so to me, and I looked into some of these groups and they have just over 100 people, but they've got a lot of power because they're considered one of the stakeholders. So we decide, okay, well, we're going to be a stakeholder. Our group is much larger than some of these other groups at this point, much larger. And so what we're trying to do, like, I'm just trying to represent the people that, like Joe is saying, most of these people, we live in a very blue collar area. A lot of people work in mills and with lots of farmers. And these guys don't care. Like, they just are like, I just did 10 hours. I just want to go home, feed my family, eat with my family, whatever it is. I don't have time to go to these. So the more of those guys and girls that we meet, we can send them out. So yesterday we did have more people that came out that were just kind of like, don't normally come out. So to me, these policies, I often refer to them as poverty policies, because I can see what it means in the future to someone. What does this gas thing actually mean? I can see where it's actually going. As much as they try to wordsmith and say, oh no, it's try to say things like, oh, don't worry, it's not retroactive. In our policies, actually, in fact, they want to have our homes all retrofitted. So my old home probably costs about 100 grand. One of the ways that they can do that is that you take a loan from your municipality, and then the loan stays with your house. So even if you sell the house, that 100 grand is still owed to the municipality. If you can't pay it, then you are then defaulting your house to the municipality. And this is, this is in a letter that was written to council. This is in their policies. So the newspaper, to me, was a way to spoon feed this information to people. Just say, hey, here's the transportation plan. This is what they have planned for you. Does this work for you? And just to kind of let people see all the boring 7 hours of stuff that I read, here's the snippet from it. Does this work for you? Does banning wood stoves, does this work for you? So that maybe these people can become more engaged. If they can't make a meeting, they can write a letter because now they know about it. And that was my vision and hope, is that I actually think that the people we represent are the actual majority in the Valley, but we have some people that are activists, retired, and they make this kind of their full-time job. So now I'm making it my full-time job.
Yeah, I think it's just as you said, very difficult for the average person to keep track of all of the things and take time to look through all of the things. They just don't have that time. Like, let's be honest. And also, if they did have some time to themselves, they don't want to be doing that. So to have a little snippet in a newspaper to go, oh, this is what's coming down the pipes, this is what's happening, this doesn't work for me. Right? I understand that the island is going through, from what I understand, I don't know, we're going through some water shortages over the summer, and there's some farming practices being affected, for example, that probably a lot of people who are not farmers have no idea about.
Yeah, it was well, I think it was British Columbia wide. It seemed to be happening all over, and it was all based, didn't matter where you were looking, it was based on the same logic, that some aquifer that a farmer was pulling their water from somehow was connected to a certain river that was low. So it didn't matter where in the province, they kind of put that logic together. However, we did meet farmers that were not pulling off of this certain river here that they said was low and we needed to save the fish. It was because of the water license program. And so the farmers were, given this time limit to apply for a water license. And only about 40% of farmers did. And one family of farmers, 3 generations of farmer, we went and talked to them, and they had actually applied, and they have grass-fed beef and pig farm. And so in order to be sustainable, you have to be able to also be able to supply your own food for your cows and your pigs. And so what happened was they applied 4 years ago, and because of, I don't know, bureaucracy, they still haven't got their license. So they had to shut their water off, and they lost their 3rd crop, which means now, if we want to talk environmental things, they're not going to have to import their hay. And we went to their barn, and their barn is normally half filled with hay to last them the whole winter. And it was really shocking. It was back to like 2 stacks because of this last crop that they just cut off the water across the province. So the farmers started to get upset, and they started to get louder, which was really great. And there was another group here that was started against the attack on farmlands. They're going to flood almost 200 acres of farm here under the guise of carbon capture and sea level rise. So a group got together, and I had spoken with them, and I said, you know what, Joe and I can't speak on everyone's behalf. We need you farmers to get loud. We're not farmers. And so they started a group called Land Keepers. And so now we have this kind of at least a couple really loud, I mean, they've even retained lawyers. We have loud groups now that are, okay, now we're opposing this. And I hate to say it, but the worse things get, the more people become engaged, which is
100%. I mean, so what Joe was saying before, that maybe you weren't going to like what he's saying, how there's 2 sides and it's an interesting time and all this stuff. I really believe that because of those things happening, and only because of those things happening, did that group, Land Keepers, just get created, and they have lawyers and they're doing beautiful things. Just like you guys, you wouldn't be here doing this thing together if you didn't have something to oppose or talk about, or, so there has to be that force in order to, and I think it's bringing out the best in people like you, because now you are driven, you are talking to people, you are on a path, you're on a mission to do something good for your community. You wouldn't have been doing this otherwise.
No. And as
Yeah.
life gets harder based on these policies, there will be more people. And the
Yeah.
policies that they run through are, I can see how they're already starting to affect me financially. So they'll just keep rolling out. And I think, yeah, people will, as you said, be more inspired. I hate to say it because I know where these policies lead. And I think, unfortunately, we are going to have to, it is going to get much worse here before we can be effective. Like, for instance, in the UK, got really bad. I mean, with ultra low emission zones and places like that, for people to actually say, okay, enough's enough, and start chopping down these cameras and things like that. So right now, unfortunately, I think even though people are feeling the financial squeeze, they're still a bit placated. And
100%.
mm-hmm,
I do think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's like that's a human thing. I think that generally an individual doesn't really change the way they do things unless they feel like they have to, unless they are in a low place where, the momentum must move. And so same thing with society. I think it's just a reflection. Like when we hit rock bottom, that's when people make a change. Otherwise, they're placated. They continue going as they're going because their business isn't too, their feathers aren't too ruffled.
Yeah. Is my mic still good? I had another error. Good. All right. I think for myself, and again, this is more of like an ideology. This is not a scientific study, but I've noticed that in our official community plan, so in our guideline for our community, where do we want to see ourselves in 2030, 2050? The basic plan is that we're hoping the direction of our community will reduce our greenhouse gases by 80%. So whatever that they currently are, we want an 80% reduction. And the reason for doing that is not specifically local. Like it's not like there's a specific river that we're dumping too much sewage in, or there's like a lake that we're destroying. We have all the kind of normal economical and environmental impacts, like when industry moves in, how do you clean up? Like I'd call it the kind of normal, how do you get your society to that good middle ground? But in terms of where are we driving our current community, we have a lot of goals. Like, for example, I believe one of the goals is to remove 40% of our vehicles off the road, and that'll help move towards our 80% reduction for greenhouse gases. And in my mind, I looked at those numbers and said, great, we're going to be innovating, engineering, creating, crafting, building. We're going to be making so many wonderful alternatives that people will just want to do that. Like for example, we only have 1% of our community right now in a survey stating that they will use a bicycle to go commute. But we want our active rideshare to be as much as even half of all of our current travel. So when I hear that, my mind tells me, wow, like what a great time to be innovative. If we're going to push that much change, think of all the cool stuff that we're going to start having. Like, your brain goes to that kind of Star Trek world. You're like, are we going to have replicators? Like, what cool stuff are we going to end up having? And the sad thing is that our policies are moving faster than what the ingenuity and the engineering is. So for the moment, you would think I'll just choose the more green option because it costs less, it's more efficient, it suits me better, has more features, it's cooler. As the time goes on, when it comes time for me to renew my car, to buy a new something, I'll just choose that lower greenhouse item because it's actually really awesome. But our policies, unfortunately, are moving faster than what the industry is. So what we've done in North Cowichan instead is we've said, well, in lapse of the better item, we're just going to police you to be more restricted, and it'll just work itself out. So in the policies, to start drawing lines a little, and I'll only use one example. If you go back to the greenhouse gas emissions, if our community says we want to remove 40% of cars from the road, well, if it's not through ingenuity, but what is it through? And one of our plans in the master transportation plan is to start cutting our arterial roads and doing what we're calling traffic calming, which actually is designed to frustrate drivers so that you don't like to drive. The roads will be narrower. There'll be bigger bike lanes. There'll be more like speed restrictions, so that maybe you used to take road A to work, but if you take it now, it's actually an extra 10 minutes. So you don't want to take it. You think, oh, well, that road sucks now. I'll take this road instead. Right. And it doesn't sound very controversial, but when you see that the infrastructure of your whole community is being built so that this is what it will be, right? So even though you may not feel it today, the goal is that you'll actually hate driving and you would prefer
Oh my gosh,
the bike over that.
No, that makes me very
at,
upset.
And that
when you
happens
look at
all
where
over.
we are too. Sorry, I'll just finish this thought. When you look at where we are, I can appreciate in big cities where you have public transit and you don't have parking. It makes sense. Maybe if you live in a little condo in a huge skyrise, why would you want a big lift truck? Like, that's ridiculous. But for North Cowichan, where we live, we're a rural little area. We have to drive 10 to 15 minutes to go to any of the little communities that surround us. North Cowichan is not a one city. We are tiny little towns. Our council calls us a community of communities. We're very spread out. It wouldn't make sense to bicycle yourself around. You need a vehicle. So here, our contribution to, call it, the world effort to reduce greenhouse gases, if we are going to join that plight, and we're not talking about controversies whether you believe in climate change, I'm stating if we're going to move towards reducing emissions, what makes sense for us? What should North Cowichan do? And we're just following the same narratives as every single other town. So there is no uniqueness, like our own unique geography and our own unique economy and all that kind of thing. Even the fact that over 50% of our population will be all retirees coming up in the next few years. We are a bit of a retirement town. Like,
right, I saw that.
Are we factoring in, like, who's going to be riding a bicycle? Like, who
is
has
the 80-year-old going to ride a bike to the grocery store?
Yeah, and
for like a half an hour ride.
Yeah, and we also get rain something like 200 days a year, and all those little things, right? So right. I just look at policy. I'm just looking at policy. I don't want to get involved in the political debates of what you believe in, because I find that a lot of the politics today are just like religion. Like, if you want to believe it and you don't need fact, it's okay. You can have a belief. I love the fact that you're free to have a belief. Please do. But if you want to drive like a municipality, we're essentially a business, you do have to have some checks and balances. And for the moment, our balances are essentially all environmental. We have almost no like business or economical policy because we've declared a climate emergency. And our climate action and energy plan essentially is the number one priority in our town. So we can't do anything unless our climate policy approves it. And everything that we do has some kind of effect on the climate. So we're just hamstrung. We can't do anything here.
I'm glad you gave context, because as you said before, it was like people that aren't from here. We live in a rainforest, right? So yes, it's known all over the world as a rainforest. And because we have these little towns, I mean, I take my son to hockey. I can't just jump on a scooter and take him to hockey. I mean, we're very rural. And the fact that they're using the same plans that they use in, say, downtown Vancouver makes sense. You SkyTrain everywhere there. I mean, it's I wouldn't want to drive. I'd rather SkyTrain for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So why are they using the cookie cutter policies when people say this isn't global, but they're all the exact same plans? Like Wales, they just reduce the speed limit to 20 kilometers an hour for certain areas. And that's just what Joe was saying. So why are we all the same instead of saying, hey, look at North Cowichan. It's completely filled with trees. I doubt that we do anything but help the planet. So what can we do? Can we grow some more hemp? Could we like, or do we
Right.
just do this one thing? You know, it's like,
Right. Yeah. If we had some creativity and ingenuity, and if we had some people who were actually looking out for our specific community with those lens and our people, we could come up with some amazing, ingenious things to do.
yeah. And that's the thing is I
But
always
instead,
say,
we're crushing the people.
yes, and like I consider myself an environmentalist, but an actual
Yeah.
environmentalist. And we aren't putting policy in that's really addressing maybe a certain environmental issue that we have here at all. It's all just climate. There's,
Right.
which is, it's not a tangible thing. The stream behind my house is clogged. No one's able to unclog it because there's too many jurisdictions, DFO, North Cowichan. There's an issue. Why don't we deal with this little stream that goes out into a marsh that we have here? But those aren't addressed. And this intangible, uncalculable climate point that we're supposed to meet, we're never going to know whether we met it or not. There's no physical, there's no way to know whether we meet, you know, North Cowichan met that. It's like a lot of things when they're just this concept. You could put anything through on a concept or a model, but it doesn't mean, but then there's no end result that you can tangibly say, oh, that stream is clear now. You can't say, oh, we met our 80% goals. That's the part that really bothers me about a lot of this, is that we've almost thrown the environment to the side and then just decided we're going to globally get together and try to stop something that we can't actually touch, feel, see anything at all.
Mm-hmm. And it went from, environmental, I can't even think of what they were using before, but now it's climate change. Now it's nice and broad. Well, the
Mm-hmm.
climate's changing. The climate's been changing before we got here. The climate's still changing with us here, and the climate's going to continue to change when we're not here. So it's so vague and broad. What does it even mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when their models kept not being met, so it was global
Mm,
warming, and
global warming. Thank you.
because it hasn't warmed, they had to switch it to climate change.
That's right.
So I'm very black and white. I like research. I like to meet goals. If someone said North Cowichan is going to meet a goal by having all their streams cleared by 2030, I'd be like, yes, right on. Okay, let's meet that goal. I can see it and we can see the fish and everything's going to be amazing. But I'm not into concepts that there's no tangibility behind that I can't see, because that's when I feel there's fraud happening. If
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't, so, um, but anyway, so our whole thing is to take these larger concepts, like I said before, and just try to put them into bite-sized pieces, because too often people will jump on, oh, a conspiracy theory or whatever it is, but I'm a very fact-based person. I like to research things and say, okay, well, okay, no, Canada did. They signed on to Agenda 2021 under Mulrooney. Like, I like to actually follow things all the way down to our local municipality. But you still have to break that barrier of people shutting you down right away by saying, oh, that's a conspiracy. When I don't deal in conspiracies, I literally will only deal in something. Even if one of my friends tells me something, I will go look up and make sure that it's correct. I won't just go off of hearsay. So we meet a lot of that. We met it last night. I saw scoffing when people were talking about things that were actually factual. And so I think to me, that's the biggest barrier that people like us have to break through locally, is that narrative that shuts down all dialogue. We see that in other things that are going on right now too. But when you call someone or label someone or something, it shuts off all dialogue and the ability to go back and forth on, oh, I mean, I'm happy to listen to why they think North Cowichan can change the weather or the climate. I would love to have that discussion with someone. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen enough at all.
that is the issue, right? Is that even if, yeah, like I said, even if you're really passionate about your, whether it's far left, far right, whatever, it's, you do have to look at it, I think, at some point from a, like, is it working though type of point of view. When you look at it locally, we had actually talked to our environmental officer here in North Cowichan, and we just asked her point blank, like, if we do these things, what is the intended outcome? Like, how much will we reduce greenhouse gas? How much money will we save, et cetera? And her answer is actually, what we do here won't be seen on like the global stage. And last night at our council meeting, it was confirmed that it won't even be seen on the Canadian stage. So what North Cowichan does for our own greenhouse gas emission will not be like calculable on our like country's scale. But we've signed on to promises and different grants, et cetera, that we've promised the province we will reduce greenhouse gases by 80%. So that's what I think people have to have that moment of pause and say, if you're really passionate about greenhouse gases, climate, carbon, whatever word you want to throw, if that's a passion for you, like, what does it mean to you if our own environmental officer says, hey, actually, this current project will do nothing towards the greenhouse gas agenda, but it will increase property, values. It will impact how you live here. So it's that kind of trade-off piece where you're like, so we're doing all this work because you want to save the planet. Our environmental officer says, hey, actually, this won't save the planet. And you say, but I believe in it, so I'm going to do it anyways. Right. And it's sort of this sort of piece that I think it's our community would be very upset if they knew, because we've signed on to these generic plans. North Cowichan specifically is not actually doing something that's unique to our climate and our people that will make a difference. So if you're really hard left and you love the climate, anything, you can't copy paste what New York did and do it in North Cowichan and say, we've also removed X amount of emissions. What you could do is say, given our climate, our area, what could we all do that would make sense for us? We could rally behind. Like, everybody wants a green planet. Everybody wants, clean water and breathable air. Everybody wants that. The only issue is that locally, how we would actually contribute is probably less of the actual like green initiative and more of the, we're in a place that we could potentially fund or house or even innovate some of those future things, such as renewable gases for energy. We are in a position to do those things, but those would be unique for us. We'd actually need council and government and our local stakeholders to invest time, effort, and resources into making that. Instead, what we get is copy paste form letters from stakeholders and NGOs on the global scale saying, here's a toolkit. Can you local left-wing type folk go to your council and sell this? And that's what we actually end up voting and agreeing on. None of our agendas are local to North Cowichan at all. None of our efforts that we're trying to make change for, again, whether you have to write or anything like that, we are not doing it for North Cowichan. We are doing it for some other entity that has passed it to a couple local advocates who go to council to speak on it. And that I think it's not going to work. We see the devastating effects to our lower middle class and our lower class citizens that are feeling the squeeze of that 10 to 17% increase in what it costs to actually live here. And unfortunately, if you speak out against it, that's when that left mob jumps up and just demonizes you. And all that we're really saying is there's actually a large part of community kind of putting their hand up saying, hey, is this working? Like, how is it looking? But the moment that you question it, it feels like the whole thing unravels. It's almost like we can't say no to a single like climate policy without canceling all of it. And like, that's not what anyone's
Because
saying.
now you're a climate denier.
Yep. Yeah, like, you can't even ask questions, right? Like, you aren't allowed to. Every time that you even ask locally, people just post you links to stuff that happened in like the UK or even like, South Mexico and stuff. And you're like, that's awesome. I'm glad that you have that resource, but the study you're citing does not have one Canadian family referenced in it. So while I appreciate that country is feeling the fear of whatever, like, we're only talking about our local governance. Like, what COAP and WIND does is essentially just between like Shawnigan Lake, which is maybe 20 minutes south, and Ladysmith, which is 20 minutes north. Our entire focus for the most part is, what can we do in this like hour drive that our local government can actually have an impact on? But we're actually trying to fight accidentally a huge global agenda. And all we're saying is, do we have to narrow that, like that one road? Do we have to make it harder for me to drive to work? Like, how is that helping the planet? Right? Like, what, me driving 5 extra minutes to get around this narrow road that you just crafted? Like, I'm just scratching my head a bit saying, like, I don't know how that helps. And what we've learned, and I would be happy to speak to it, is what we've learned is that how we actually report on the greenhouse gases makes it so the little tiny changes, that's 1 ton removed, that's 2 tons taken away. And a sense that we've promised the province that we'll remove 80% of greenhouse gases, every single climate policy, that's another ton taken away, another ton taken away. We essentially have to do it. We might have a local government that we can go talk to and vote and speak on and do surveys and public engagement and things like that. But we are beholden to our climate emergency and our promise that we will put climate number 1. And that, I think, would blow people's minds if they actually took a second to realize what that means. You can't do anything that doesn't impact the environment. We live in the environment. So like, how do you move your community forward with a zero impact to anything? That's why we start seeing all these net zero equivalencies. And it's saying, well, we can't remove that greenhouse gas, but we'll plant a tree over here, and that will equal the removal of that. And then all you really see are these lofty promises that if we do this thing, some other country will plant 1 million trees for us. And then the trail goes cold when you realize that less than, I think it's 4% of those actually grow into anything. So it's very unfortunate that we have to fight such a big global agenda just to make little changes in our small town. And it wouldn't be like that if we didn't already agree to all these very extreme goals. And I think our whole point of this entire thing is just to let people know all these changes are not driven by a town hall or a community vote or a local survey. This is not your friends and neighbors saying, we want this. It's completely external. And that's why citizens here feel that squeeze. And unfortunately, they really internalize it. Most people that we talk to when we do surveys in like the lower income areas, most people there just think that they've failed. I should get a second or third job. I handle my finances wrong. I bought the wrong home. I have the wrong job. I took the wrong education. Like, they completely blame themselves. And nobody even thinks to look at the local government because it just doesn't make sense on that level for them. It's like, how can the local government make my life harder when all they talk about is building permits and variances? But you don't really realize, unless you actually go to council, how many promises that we give to the province that now we're beholden to, and we're stuck. We're very much stuck. And to break through that I think is why people pat us on the back, and maybe Adriana and I don't completely appreciate it, but we think that we're just trying to educate locals as to this. Hey guys, if they pass this, you won't be able to do this no more. Do you care? And we're like, we think that you would care. And you start talking about it, and out of the woodwork comes this hate group that just demonize you, and you're not even allowed to talk about it. So then you're kind of sitting back thinking, wow, like, am I way off base? And it only takes, like I said, skimming a council meeting for maybe 20 minutes, and you can see what happened. Like, it's not controversial. Like, you could even figure out what councillor voted that particular policy in, And 3 months later, you see it implemented and you know exactly why that happened. But you wouldn't know unless you followed it and you were there. And like I said, with our local vote, we have almost a quarter of eligible voters coming out. So very low voter turnout. And for council agendas and meetings and surveys, barely any participation. What we do see are the organized left groups that have newsletters and that kind of stuff. They blast it out to friends and family. All of our surveys are one-sided, and we are just trying to bring the other narrative and reach the part of our community that's absent from these things. Like that's the very end goal. Is there's a huge amount of our community that is missing from this conversation, and we're trying to let them know it's important that you know these things because your life will be impacted by them.
Wow. Yeah, I really feel like, I've been labeled right, and I think I've been labeled right because, I'm an environmentalist at heart, but I really have a bad taste in my mouth by what's been going on because it feels like I have to fight the environmental policies because they don't look to me like they are here in my best interest or in my environment's best interest, actually. And if I look at specifically what the government has allowed and what they are doing, they are not acting in the environment's best interest. So for them to try and put a squeeze on me and tell me how it is I should live my life because exactly all the things that you said, because we're going to take carbon out of the air or whatever, it just, yeah, it feels like fraud. And it feels like I'm pushed now to the other side. I'm pushed to the right because I'm fighting their proposed agenda, which, like, I think a lot of us have ended up somehow on the right because it doesn't make any sense what's going on over there now. So
yeah, I was going to totally say what you just said, in the fact that what I find interesting through all these policies is that the people who is demonized is the homeowner and the farmer and the commuter. I mean, even in our emissions math that they use here, right through the middle of our town is the Trans-Canada Highway. Okay, so thousands and thousands and thousands of cars go through, but that's not counted. Put that away. The mill is not counted. So we're counting this based on my consumption of gas in my vehicle and in my home. That's basically how that's what they use. They use the gas bills, the hydro bills, and the gas fill-ups, which I don't know how they differentiate between who lives here and who doesn't. But anyway, so globally, but then locally, I feel it's a complete attack on just you and I. There is no, hey, let's cut the emissions from these 5 mills or anything like that, even though they do kind of go pretty hard on them too. But that's my problem with this, is that they've demonized like my home because it's old. It's not efficient. So therefore it's helping create the end of the world because I live in this home. Like, these are the narratives that are just so twisted. And the problem is too, is that the reason we have become as comfortable as we are in Canada and where we live is because we've allowed innovation. We've allowed the ability to use power sources such as natural gas and things like that. And right now with this global policy, what's happening in the third world countries and the developing nations is that they're saying they also have to meet these goals. And so they are not allowing them to grow to where we are in our area, Western world of comfort and warmth. And they still must, burn their peat inside their houses or whatever it is. And so we've become, and now it feels like they're trying to drag us back from where we have. Okay, no more of these things that made us a successful and comfortable society that Canada once was. So I think that's where I get offended, is that, and this started way back because of my age. I mean, I remember feeling guilty that I had more than one child, because it was like, oh, wow, So they've been feeding this narrative for a very, very long time. But that's what it breaks down to, is that you and I are the problem. The farmer's the problem. His cow farts are the problem. And that's it. I can't take policy from people that fly in private jets, and then just say, but don't worry, because like Joe said, I paid for 400 trees to be planted, that you can't ever tell if that happened. And I've asked council this before, and everyone should ask this question to their local council or to your local environmental specialist is, what is net zero? Because we can't have zero carbon or we would all die. So we're at 420 ppm right now. At about 200, life starts dying. So to me, if you can't answer that question, what this goal is, because we can't have zero, what does it actually mean? So to me, what it actually means is you will pay for the carbon that you use. And your carbon is eating your meat, or your carbon is driving your child to hockey and you drove too far. So that's the only way you can ever have zero carbon, is to say, I'm using this carbon, but I'm offsetting it. Because we can't have no carbon. That's plant food. So this is what I really want to, keep getting the
only way I feel like we could get to no carbon is if everybody had their own homestead, okay, and raised their own animals that they ate themselves or traded for vegetables or what have you. But they're making that obsolete. They're targeting people like me who are doing that. So there is, it's a no-win situation, really.
Yeah, which is also interesting, because the narrative is that 15-minute cities are supposed to be the way of the future. But it's interesting. It's not, it's only 15 minutes for people who live in it, because you're still sourcing your food from outside of it. You're sourcing your clothing, your shoes, your electronics, everything gets shipped to it. You're like this Amazon warehouse now. It's like, bring everything in. You can live in the warehouse. You can't leave the warehouse, but don't worry, we'll ship everything to you, so you'll be just fine, right? And it's interesting because, like, yeah, it says 15-minute city, but what they really mean is you are in the 15-minute city. The rest of the world and the economy and the world trade and the everything, that totally still runs, but you stay in your 15-minute circle. And when we made fun of it a little bit, and we were like, well, all right, let's just go with this, right? Where is the town tannery? How do I go and find some hides to tan so I can go to the local cobbler and get myself a new pair of shoes? Like, I'm not really sure if, like, Adidas is moving in anytime soon to make me a shoe, but I'll go find a cobbler. And, that's not part of the plan. That's not in the 15-minute agenda. The only thing about the 15-minute agenda is, can you bicycle to the grocery store and back in 15 minutes? If you can, that's your 15-minute city. So even from like that kind of funny economic stage, you're like, so every other system keeps working. It's just these couple of things that actually stay in there. And then of course, like, you could be funny about it. You could start breaking down more things like how about if you travel outside of your district, and like, how many tokens do I need to go this far? And like, you start picking at it. It does get funny. But if the entire purpose of all of this is to actually affect the global stage, right? Because we're all saying we can't look outside and see it. There is no smog. There is no pile of garbage. Like, it doesn't exist in our community. We're just saying that to be good neighbors, we should all pitch in. And I think it rolls back to that same narrative and says, well, like, how can North Cowichan help? I don't know if me jumping on a bicycle is going to actually do anything. If we live in an area that is really great for farming, say, why don't we ramp up farming? Like, why don't we do a whole lot more of it? Even if it creates extra carbon, like, because our area is suited for it, wouldn't that offset somewhere else? Like, would we ship less? Would we trade less? Would we export less? Like, would there be an offset elsewhere? And those are those creative, innovative things that I think we would likely do, but we don't get that. We get the copy paste answer for everywhere. And I think that's why it's so hard to buy into, because I know our community is unique. I know our people are unique. I know our infrastructure is, what we have here is just for us. It's duplicated elsewhere, but not to the extent that every single town looks like us. So shouldn't our plan be for us? And it's just not. So that I think is my fundamental thing here, is that I don't really touch a lot of the global stuff. I don't have to go bigger, because my focus, at least for this project, is just locally. What can we do on our local stage that would help locals, and all we get is be a good neighbor and do all this stuff because we think it'll help on the global stage. And ironically enough, even our own environmental officer tells us it won't. And that doesn't matter. Like, I'm not sure why it doesn't matter. Maybe people are too terrified. Maybe they're too climate hysteria. Maybe it's some kind of a brainwashing thing. I don't want to speculate. All I'm stating is that our own town has admitted this won't do anything. And yet we're still steamrolling it through, and not even doing it. We're fast tracking it. We are putting through greenhouse gas emission policies 6 to 8 years before the province is even telling us to, because we're trying to prove out how progressive that we are. Like it doesn't make sense. Like economically, it makes no sense. It only makes sense when you look at it from an emotional standpoint. If you're trying to like fulfill your conviction and feel that whole affirming of my feelings are true, I believe in this, and everyone's telling me that I'm right, so I feel good about myself and what I'm doing. I'm saving the planet. If that's what you're going for, we're doing a bang up job. If you actually want to achieve anything and like move our community forward, we're just failing at everything, and it's going totally unnoticed for the general population because they're so busy just trying to live in this place that we have created. They can't stand up against it. They barely keep their head above water. Like Adriana and I are fortunate enough to be in a position where we have a bit of time, a little bit of resources, a good community in behind of us to do this. It just lucked out that we had the option to kind of fight. Hopefully we can continue to do that. I don't think our little community is quite ready to turn into the city of tomorrow in 2 or 3 years. But if we don't say something, our council will ram it down at our throats, regardless of the cost, because we already know that the climate narrative is the #1 agenda in our town. Our mayor has said it, our councilors have said it, our OCP says it. That's not a conspiracy. We put climate change as the #1 priority. It is above affordable homes. It is above homelessness. It is above food security, transportation. If you name it, it's beneath our climate agenda. That is our #1 goal.
And if you look at how skewed that climate agenda is, so what makes sense is that we're looking at some fraud. There's fraud somewhere. It's a global agenda. It's being pushed down our throats for some reason. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't feel right. Yeah. So the work that you're doing is very important. And
thank you. And anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. It's just like, if I were to just break this down, if you just take the time and you get 2 people in your community, literally only 2 people, because right now there is no pushback. All you have to do is just look at especially if you are a little bit trained in what you're looking for, there's certain words, sustainability, like you know certain words to look for. Just look at your agenda. And if just 2 of you show up and you get 3 people to write a letter, that will start to be the first time that council's ever had, oh, there's people with another opinion. Because in reality, council is supposed to serve the majority. But when they think the majority is this one loud group of people, but it's not the majority, then they kind of have the obligation to serve whom they think is the majority. So we have on our website, you can go to YouTube, you can see how we go speak at council to give you a little bit of ideas, thoughts. We have resource pages. We have put up our freedom of information requests, so you can just copy them and do it for your own council.
Oh, that's great.
So we're trying to not, like, even some of our other networks, we don't want people doing double duty. We just want to say, oh, that worked in Kamloops for you, great, I'm going to try that here. Or, oh, that worked for you guys. So take our stuff, take our FOIAs, take our letters, whatever it is, and then you don't have to do the work. And then just start little.
So, and then we can find all this information on your website.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So if somebody who knows nothing about any of this and they're watching this today for the first time, they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea about this. How do I do the thing? So do they just Google their council? Do they Google their agenda? How do they even know, like, where to find that?
Yeah, they would just Google their local municipality, and then in the municipality, there's usually something that says agenda, meetings, and minutes. And you press on that and it will take you to previous agendas and meetings, and you can usually watch them live. I haven't heard of a municipality that's not live, but then we'll also show you the upcoming. So then you open up the next one that's coming up, and there's attachments, and you can open the attachments to see what is being presented to council for that meeting. So yes, and worst case scenario, just call them. I mean, usually the secretaries are super nice at the local municipalities. You just call them up and ask if you need help.
Nice. Great. Well, that's excellent. Excellent for somebody to start looking into the things that are going on in their community.
Yeah, I think that's the only way that we're going to affect change. I really don't think that you're going to be able to talk to, I mean, I'm not saying don't talk to your MPs, but they are part of a party and they're whipped and they have to stay in line. Whereas your local municipal councillor is just, usually you're just your average Joe that lives in the community. So there's a greater ability to actually connect and actually have some dialogue than there is with someone who must, I mean, our local municipality isn't a party, so there's a little bit more freedom of thought and expression that's you're able to have there. Unfortunately, most of them do tend to lean one way, but once they start seeing that the policies aren't working.
What would you like to see? Like, what are some of your goals here? You know, for, let's say, for the end of the year for the Cowichan Valley, what are some of the goals with your newspaper and your website? And, you know, somebody who's watching this, what would you like to achieve?
Well, personally, I'd like the newspaper to continue doing what it's doing. And of course, like Joe said, we're gathering some more people to wear some more hats so that we don't have to do everything.
So you need some people. That's one of the things.
Yep.
To keep your newspaper alive.
Yep. And to keep other projects in the works, because we have like a mini documentary series on the farmers, but there's only so much. But there's only so but at the same time, Joe has to do the layout, but he can't do this. So we actually need some more people.
What kind of people do you need, Joe?
I think we have most of them in our community.
Yeah, at the moment, like my role is everything that involves a computer, essentially. So like our social media, our website, like the documentary stuff, filming, audio, like all of that is just me. So like 100% of everything we kind of create comes like from my computer, essentially. If I had a wish list, actually, what I would ask for would be to funnel more information to us. A huge amount of where our time goes is actually to go source the latest agenda, the latest information. A lot of times what we find locally is whenever something big on the global stage happens, like whether or not it's a big international effort or, dare I say, a WEF or UN thing, within about 6 months later, we'll see it come to our local council in the same format that was like the bigger agenda. And again, that's not a conspiracy thing. It's just that if the global elites align and say, this is what we want everybody doing, it just takes time for it to filter down to the front level. So in order for us to know what's coming on our local council, we almost have to follow the world stage stuff about 6 to 9 months before that. So essentially, we always have to be learning about what happens on the bigger picture, and we have to know the 6 to 9 month backward about what's going to come to our local council next month. And in order to stay up to date on all of that, we're constantly sourcing like videos and CPAC stuff and like things from the amount of knowledge we're trying to pull in is insane. But secondly, then we have to take all of that and make something in a 2 to 3 to 4 minute video locally that translates the bigger picture to just us here. Like, hey, we put this through because this happened 6 months ago, and 3 months before that, we voted on this. So there go. Now we have to do this. And to make that whole narrative is a lot of work. So if we had more people that were in the know, that follow different newsletters, news groups, watch the videos, just knew what was happening that could just pitch us the kind of summary version. So if something seems to translate local, then we can go look more. For the moment, we have to look at everything and then just pick out the little stuff that hits us local. If there was some like brain trust that would just send us stuff, that would be amazing. If that feature exists, please sign me up for that. I will take that immediately.
Okay. So if I know some of those people, so if those people were to send you stuff, where do they send it?
The best place to send it is just contact@coap.ca. Most of our stuff gets filtered in there. We have some good email filters that kind of organize. So essentially, if you want to reach out to us to send us anything or even connect with us and try to get some narrative going or share ideas or thoughts or anything that worked, things that failed so we don't go down the same road, just contact@coap.ca. It goes to all of our stuff, laptops, phones, etc. We stay pretty up to date on those ones. That's the best way to reach us.
Sweet. So that was like your number one request, is have information funneled to you. What's your number two? Do you need a mini me?
There are 2 or 3 of them. Yeah,
You need a new techie friend?
my second wish, if I was just saying it, would be really a way to source funding that isn't a direct donor. If we had like a campaign manager or somebody that would actually be able to source out, not just, hey, does Bob give you $50, but to actually help us come up with different campaigns and things that would generate money. What we would really like to do is not rely on donors or angel investors or whatever. We really like to partner with other people and organizations doing similar work to what we are doing, so we can support one another. So we have the newspaper, for example. If you have a business and your business ideas align with ours a bit, want to advertise with our paper instead of the other like local lefty one or something, right? And then vice versa, we can do partnerships with like coupons or ad sales or whatever. I think we would really like to partner with people so we can collab and share each other's resources. That would be my second wish list, is just a good group of people that we can share our common knowledge and wealth, and we can all promote each other forward. I feel if we had someone to manage that for us, it's very difficult for me to throw the techie hat on and then the journalist hat on and the salesman hat on. Like, it's a different mindset, and to flip between all those things, I just find it really difficult. If all I did was just the kind of tech stuff and I could put my head down and I only owned that part of it, I'd just be a lot more efficient. Like, you lose so much efficiency when you keep changing hats to do different things. I'm grabbing different gear, different hardware. I feel like I work 8 hours a day and only produce 1 hour worth of something. And I just feel like my time is not efficient. So anyone out there that is in that world, if you're a salesman or you happen to have a good organization that we could even just join and contribute to, please reach out. I'd love to talk to you.
Yay. We're getting somewhere here.
We're going to be sourcing out from our local community here some of the smaller things and larger things that we need to save us time. Because I feel like on my part, my entire day, besides raising my children and keeping my animals alive and everything else, is constant reading, research, and talking to people on the phone. And I love connecting because we're making all these amazing connections. But to me, I feel like if there was some filter between me and this, so that they could say, oh, I'll take on that call, or I'll take on that whatever. Because also by the end of the day, I feel like, okay, I've made a lot of connections. This is amazing. Researched a lot of stuff, but now I still have to write 4 articles and I still have to. So I think we're just going to bring in like a little bit tighter group of people, and the larger networks that Joe was talking about, but just a few, like, can we get like 4 people that are just kind of able to take on some of these extra things? It's not a lot to take on some phone calls. Like if you are a stay-at-home mom or something like that, and you're able to do that, then maybe they can take that part on, which would free me up and for what I like to do best. And then Joe up, which he likes to do best, which is artistic, creative digital stuff, and mine's much more the writing and the research type of stuff. So yeah, I think we're on our way. We just wanted to hold it close to us for a while until we got secure with what we're doing, and now we're willing to be like, okay, we want to make this next step, but we can't make it. We just can't make it without some people on board. So it's exciting. We'll definitely get some people on, I'm sure.
Yay. That is really exciting, and it's really clear. So now we know what you need. That's perfect. I love it.
Yeah, well, you have to think
Okay.
that what we're doing is we're just, when you look at these left global NGOs, they are so, holy smokes, their resources would blow your mind. You can just go on there and it says, here's a handbook on how to infiltrate council. So here's Joe and I in our, little houses go, okay, how are we going to do this? So we just, obviously we're not going to grow to some, global scale, but what we're just trying to do is, okay, let's make this machine run even a quarter as efficiently as their machine runs, so.
That's amazing. And how old are your kids, Adrian?
16 and 19.
And what kind of animals do you have?
Well, that's why I kept muting, because I got a kitten that's going ballistic around here. I don't have any, unfortunately, any farm animals. I just have, that's why the curtains were moving behind me.
Yeah, I knew it was a cat.
I just have cats and dogs. I don't, where I live, you're not really allowed anything but maybe a couple chickens. Like I actually live a block from Joe. So we're in the exact same neighborhood.
Oh, hey,
It's
that's nice.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Just walk over and commiserate together and walk back.
And you've got little ones, Joe, yeah?
Yeah, three kids.
3 kids. How old are they?
Yeah. 2, 10, and 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so,
a range.
And then on top of that, a 40-hour-a-week normal job plus all of this, and everything else.
Oh, you've got a normal job.
Yeah, I have like a normal Monday to Friday salary type of job. So yeah, on top of all the other stuff, this too. So I think earlier on when I was saying my hobbies are essentially just learning to always do stuff, it sort of translated into this. I'm already kind of a techie person, with making websites or social media or video editing. I know like every Adobe piece of software, pretty much, WordPress, all that kind of stuff. And it used to be a hobby, right? I used to do some graphics for some businesses and video game design and stuff like that. I've just stopped all of those, and it just goes into this. So as soon as I'm done my normal day, have some dinner, kids go to bed, that kind of stuff, from 8 to midnight, it's all this, and then wake up the next day and do it again.
Wow. You guys are driven people.
Well, I actually wouldn't even say that I'm all that driven. I'm more astonished. I'm almost kind of like blown away that, like, the really short version is, you always watch politics on TV and it's exciting because news cuts out the exciting bit. They draw lines of these controversies, and when you hear like, oh, it's exciting, people get caught doing crazy stuff, and you're like, oh, that's amazing, and it seems exciting because it's real. It's like reality TV, but it impacts countries. There's nothing like cooler to watch than that. That's exciting stuff to follow, and you think it's just like American politics or somewhere else. But when you follow your little local town stuff, and you act.
Oh, hang on. You cut out. Yeah.
I'm gonna interject in what he was saying there, which is hilarious while he's fixing this, is that we're like on the phone, we're like, we're such nerds. We're actually like, we're actually watching like online. We have 4 governments here, so we can't go to them all. So we're watching it online, and we're actually loving it. We're like, oh my God, did you see like hour 122? And so we're like geeking out on our local government and their little squabbles and what they're doing. And it's pretty funny.
Yeah. Am I back again?
You're back.
Yeah.
I am. Cool. Yeah. I think when I realized all the the crazy controversy and the fun stuff that you see on like, mainstream news about politics, when you realize that actually happens in your local town, it's just so small. It's not as cool. Like instead of being a whole group worth billions of dollars, it's a little nonprofit worth 10 grand. But you're like, oh, it's you guys wrote that email that then had the council do this, and he reached out to you to consult, right? And you're like, oh, like it's, oh my god, like it's happening here too, right? And it is really exciting to actually see that, as lame as it sounds, our tiny little town has the same like world stage controversies. They're just kind of lame because there's only 30,000 of us, right? So it's we just get, it's almost like if you're like comparing like the NFL to like NCAA or something, you're like, this is college ball. It's still cool. It's not like NFL, but here locally, it's like, this is like the high school juniors that we get to see the same stuff happen that we see globally. And I just find it fascinating. Like I actually mean that word literally, is I find it fascinating that the style of politics is mirrored right in your tiny little town as the same as what it is when you watch like mainstream and they blow stuff up. So if you actually care enough for the local stuff, it happens right here too. It's totally amazing.
And this is why we juxtapose each other so well, because I mean, I've spent thousands and thousands of hours figuring out, the larger picture, right? So to me, I can become pretty frustrated because I don't want my children in, this kind of dystopian world that the counselors don't even realize that's what they're pushing for based on some moral thing. And so I can get like, oh my God, I can't believe they did it. Rah, rah, rah. And then Joe will just be like, I think this is great, because now it'll be like, okay, we had another hit piece done on us by some local anti-hate person. And I'm like, I can't believe this woman, she's writing these lies and writing stuff about our, and he's like, this is great, because she didn't really get any exposure for it. But also in fact, that's when our membership started to climb, like quicker, was right after that thing came out. So his lighthearted way of, taking me down when I'm just like, I can't believe these people are like this, then so it's a good kind of combination of my like, okay, serious 10,000 hours research, and then like, so it's a good kind of, I guess, partnership when it comes to like personalities and stuff like that. So you also have to have that when you pick your second person. You got to know that you can work together.
Yeah, and I think it's a game. Let's not get too emotionally deep or involved in that sense that it brings down our emotions, because just like you said, just like Joe brings up, it's great for a different purpose that we didn't even see. It's working on our behalf somehow. I think there's a bigger picture that this is, even though it may, like we said before, it may get more difficult, it may get darker. I think that that's purposefully going to bring us to a better place.
I agree. I mean, if I didn't agree, I would just curl up in a corner and, I mean, you have to look at the silver linings. Otherwise, what's the point? And for my
and I think they're real. I think they're real.
I do too. I mean, I wouldn't have met Joe or the 1,000 other amazing people I've met if it weren't for the hardships that we have had to endure.
Right. Well, same here.
You have to be humble enough to know that both the far left and the far right are ridiculous. There's no way that society can run effectively all the way to either side. Like I said a million times, it's just that the current left agenda has gotten so powerful that they've pulled the left so far over. Even being in the middle makes you on the right, because you have to counter some of it just to balance things out. Like it's simply too much. It's too aggressive all in one bucket, and people have blinders on to what the side effects are that they're causing on the opposite end. So if people don't call it out, we'll just move forward without that feedback loop, and then whatever we end up with, we will lose a whole subset of society. We'll lose our lower middle class, we'll lose our lower class, we'll lose our ability to do whatever. And what we've just noticed, the really easy way to say it is, there's absolutely no forceful voice on the other side of it because they've demonized and canceled and doxed everybody on that side. And like, you know, that's not that, like, that's not how I think that we should run things. Again, I don't really care that much if it's hard left or right for what your passion is. You have to allow some of the other side. You have to. And right now we aren't, and we're personally attacking people who bring the other side up. And I just don't know how on any political stage that would be even remotely okay.
Agreed.
Hmm.
You guys are amazing. Back to the, I'm super grateful to have had this conversation with you, to have found you. I'm super grateful you're doing what it is that you're doing, and you're doing the work of so many people to bring this like tidbit of information that you're, you know, capable of downsizing into something that it makes sense for the average Joe. Like, we all need that. I don't have time to go through and look at all the things that you're looking at. I just don't have time. I have chickens jumping in the ocean and about to get eaten by coyotes if I don't if I don't go look see what's going on with all the chirping. Like, I have stuff to do.
But that's what we were talking about. And the Survival Chicks is an amazing website. And Joe and I don't have the time to do what you guys do. Like, you are giving a whole different thing. Joe and I do not do anything like what you guys do. So isn't this amazing how we can all just do our thing, all for, you know, the eventual goal of, I don't know, happiness, prosperity, having our children live in a nice world. So I think it's wonderful. I think you guys are wonderful. So I just love all these different pods that are kind of working together in a way.
Yeah, community.
Yeah, a good community.
Building our community.
Mm-hmm. And only if you're interested in what we're doing should you do it. If not, if you're more interested in the survival side, then that's what you should do. Like, don't think oh God, I got to go to council. Joe and I actually enjoy that. So
Right.
to me, it's like, do something, but pick something that you will feel some passion towards, right?
Yes. Yes. Pick the thing that's right for you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do all the things.
No, God, no. No.
Yeah. And so that's what makes it really easy for people, is what you're doing, is because you're breaking it down to little bites that people can understand quickly. Mm-hmm. And they don't have to go do the thing that you're doing that they don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful.
Thanks for having us on. That was so nice of you to give us a voice. I really appreciate it. And thanks for
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then I will be sure to post all of your information, how to find you, how to donate to you, how to find your newspaper, and how to send you information, or how to, you know, apply to come and hang out with you and work with you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome. I can't wait to see some of the things that you do, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, I have your number. I will.
Yay.
All right.
Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful day out there, you guys.
Now you
Thank
too.
you
Take
so
care.
much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.